Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be reacting to your Black Sabbath hot takes that you left me. If for some reason I skip over yours, I'm sorry. I had them all saved on my phone originally, but then I backed up my photos onto Google Photos to save space on my phone. So I just have screenshots of everything. Now I'm just looking on the actual post, the comment section of the post. So let's get into this. 13 is a decent album and a good ending to the band. Yeah, it's a decent album. I agree with that. It was decent. I think it is a good way to end the album. I wish they would have had a different drummer, Bill Ward, or I don't know why they didn't get Vinny Appice if they couldn't get Bill Ward. I don't know. I guess they didn't want Vinny Appice for whatever reason. From what I've read, I don't even think they asked Vinny if he wanted to rejoin the band. I'm not sure why they didn't go with Vinny, but strange decision. 13 is an amazing album. Doesn't sound that far out of place next to their 70s work, besides the more modern production and Bill Ward's absence. I wouldn't say it's amazing. To me, it's a good album. I don't hate it. I don't think it's bad by any means, but it's a good album. I don't think it tops any of those. No, I don't think it tops any of the albums from the 70s, but it's a good album. I'm not gonna say it's awful. And I think that not having Bill Ward did hurt that album. My controversial opinion is most of 80s Sabbath sucks, including Heaven and Hell. Mob Rules, Born Again, and especially Headless Cross are good. I'm honestly surprised you don't like The Eternal Idol if you like Headless Cross. That's kind of surprising. If you've not heard the most recent remaster of The Eternal Idol, I recommend listening to it. Because for me, that album ranks right alongside Headless Cross in terms of being one of the best from the 80s. As for Heaven and Hell, I can understand not liking that album's production or maybe the second half of it. I think Heaven and Hell is a very front-loaded album, and the production's not the greatest. I'd love to see a Tony Iommi remix for that album. And I can understand not liking Seventh Star. I get it if you don't like Seventh Star. Sweet Leaf is the band's most overrated song. Don't think it's much of a great song, to be honest. It's just mind of average to me. I think you mean kind of average to you. Yeah, I can understand not liking Sweet Leaf if you don't really like that main riff, the bow now, if you don't like that riff that Tony Iommi has for that song, I can understand where you're coming from. As people say, I would go say 13 is a really good album to end Black Sabbath's career and doesn't bother me too much that Bill Ward wasn't on it. I can understand that, as we talked about earlier. Technical Ecstasy is a Sabbath classic in my opinion, as good as everything else that came before it. I like Technical Ecstasy. It took me a while to warm up to that album. I used to hate it, but, I've warmed up to it. I like it now. It's not one of my absolute favorites from the 70s, but, it's a good album. Dio-era Black Sabbath is definitely better than Ozzy-era Black Sabbath. As a whole, yes, there are some Ozzy Sabbath albums I'd take over Heaven and Hell, but yes, I do prefer Dio-era Sabbath over Ozzy. I just have more of a personal connection to Dio than I do Ozzy. I love Ozzy, don't get me wrong, but Dio's my favorite singer. I actually like the Born Again production. I think it makes the album even more heavier and evil sounding. I agree with that. The production on Born Again does make it heavier and evil. It has a certain charm to it. I do like the production on Born Again. Can't wait for the Tony Iommi remix though. Headless Cross is a drop-dead classic and easily as good as any Ozzy Black Sabbath album, if not even better than some. I agree with that. I love that take. Yes, I love Headless Cross. I mean respect to Tommy for doing this, but to be honest, I don't get why Black Sabbath let him do Rat Salad. I know he was a great drummer, but in my opinion, that should be the song that no other drummer could do in Black Sabbath other than Bill Ward. Yeah, that was Bill Ward's solo. I can respect that. As much as I love Bill Ward, I would say Vinny Appice was a better drummer, but it's really close. They're different. I don't think you can really compare Bill Ward to Vinny Appice. Bill Ward was more of a jazz drummer. Vinny Appice, I keep wanting to call him Vinny Appice for some reason. Vinny Appice, he would pound on the drums. He would beat them up. But Bill Ward, he was kind of a bluesy drummer, a jazz type drummer. While Vinny Appice was a fella who would pound on the drums. Same with Cozy Powell. They had rhythm, don't get me wrong. But it's just two different drumming types. I don't really think it's fair to compare them. They're just, they have different styles. I actually really like the song Swingin' the Chain. I do too, that's a good song. As much as I love Dio-era better than Ozzy, I would say Tony's guitar work was the best on the Ozzy albums with both his riffs and solos. Honestly, I like his riffs more in the Dio-era stuff, if I'm being honest, but I can understand liking the Ozzy-era riffs more. Volume 4 and Sabotage are better than Paranoid. I think Sabotage is way better than Paranoid. Sometimes I will rank Paranoid over Volume 4, but I usually do say Volume 4 is better than Paranoid. In my opinion, Iron Man is nowhere near close to one of the best Tony Iommi riffs. No, I think he has better riffs than that, but you cannot deny how iconic that Iron Man riff is. Just, it's very iconic. I get why people love it. I did have fun reacting to them. Thanks for leaving them. I think Sweet Leaf is the most overrated Black Sabbath song. It's painfully boring, and I have no idea why it's considered a fan favorite. Again, I understand where you're coming from. If you're not crazy about the bow now, like if you don't like that riff, I get it. And if you're just not crazy about Ozzy's vocals on that, or you don't really think I get it if you think it drags on for too long. Tony Martin era was the best era, in my opinion. I respect you for saying that, my friend. I love the Tony Martin era of Sabbath. I will never understand the hate for it. I bet like 50% of the fellers who hate on the Tony Martin era of Sabbath, I bet they've never even listened to those albums. My hottest take is the fact that I really love Ian Gillan's vocals on Born Again. Me too! I love his vocals. He gives a chaotic energy to those songs from this album, and that makes it stand out even more for the rest of their discography. I agree 100%. Ian Gillan's vocals on Born Again are otherworldly. The shrieks that feller could do. When I heard Disturbing the Priest, it horrified me the first time I heard that song. I had never heard someone's voice do that type of shrieking before. And the guitar that Tony Iommi plays on that, so sinister. When you think of Black Sabbath, to me, Disturbing the Priest is among their most evilest songs. Man, what a tune that is. 13 is a great album and a gift for the fans of classic Sabbath. I agree it's a gift for the fans of classic Sabbath. I just wish Bill Ward was on that album and had better production. Ozzy era is the best Black Sabbath has ever been. I respect that. I think most fellers that are Black Sabbath fans think the Ozzy era is the best. And you know, I understand it. I get it. I don't think there's anything wrong with having that opinion. I love Ozzy, but my personal favorite era is the Dio era. Forbidden really isn't as bad as people make it out to be. You can definitely feel the 90s influence, but I would say it's still pretty decent. Yeah, I don't think Forbidden's nearly as bad as fellers make it out to be. I like Forbidden. I think it's got some great Tony Iommi guitar riffs on that album. Although Tony Martin's voice, it does sound shot. It just sounds like he needs to give his voice a break on that album. You could tell that they were non-stop touring, non-stop making albums. His voice was giving out, and you could tell in Forbidden. 13 is their best album! I guess that's why it's called a hot take, because, man, I don't agree with that at all, but I respect it. It's just, really? 13's their best? I mean, I'd love to know why you think it's their best. After Forever is in my top 10 favorite Black Sabbath songs. The riff is good as always, Tony was a riff king, and the song is just really well done overall. And who doesn't like a bit of Christian music once in a while? Yeah, that is a Christian song, for those fellas saying that Black Sabbath are satanic. Yeah, After Forever, that is a Christian song. So is Ancient Warrior off the Eternal Idol. But yeah, I respect that opinion. I like After Forever, it's a good tune. I think they should have went disco in the late 70s. That would have been interesting to see. I bet they could do it. You ever seen, you ever heard Ozzy's cover of Staying Alive by the Bee Gees? It's on the Prince of Darkness box set back there. If you've never heard that, go listen to Ozzy's cover of Staying Alive. He was just having fun, and honestly, his voice doesn't sound that bad for that kind of music. Maybe I would have liked to see a Sabbath disco album. You could definitely tell. I don't think it would have aged the best, but who knows? Maybe it would have. I don't know. I think I'm kind of curious what that might have sounded like. Every era is unique. What can you say? Ozzy, Dio, and Gillan are legends. And so are Tony Martin and Glenn Hughes. I agree with that take. Tony Martin is a better singer than Ozzy. Objectively, he is, yes. But I can understand if you like Ozzy's vocal style more than Tony Martin's. But in terms of vocal range, yes, Tony Martin blows Ozzy across the galaxy in terms of vocal range. But, you know, sometimes vocal range isn't everything, you know? Because, like, Tony Martin has, like, a 5-octave vocal range, but I think Ozzy only had, like, a 2 or 3 octave vocal range. Sometimes vocal range isn't everything. It has to do with singing style. I mean, you don't have to be the most technically gifted singer for fellers to like your voice, you know? The thing that made Ozzy so special is nobody sounded like him. You know, he wasn't the greatest singer on earth, but he had a unique style. And sometimes being unique is more important than being able to hit high notes and whatnot. But in his prime, Ozzy could hit high notes and stuff. But I'm just saying, like, overall, Ozzy's style is what made him, you know, such a unique singer. And the aura around Ozzy that he had. The character, the persona, the madman. That's why fellers were more attached to Ozzy than they were Tony Martin. Because Ozzy was a crazy person. You look at Tony Martin, it's just like, yeah, he's a rock dude. But there ain't really much to him. I wish they did an album with Rob Halford when he was the replacement for a little bit. I wanted to see how that would go. Me too. Could you imagine singing? Could you imagine having I almost said Ozzy. Rob Halford, sorry, singing on a Black Sabbath album. Man, that'd be awesome. That'd be so cool. I'd love to see that. Born Again has an awesome album cover, in my opinion. Never Say Die is my least favorite Ozzy era Sabbath album. I can understand not liking Never Say Die. As for the Born Again album cover, I mean, it's goofy. I don't think it's really awesome, but it's pretty goofy, I will say. I think it's it's a product of its time. Just my opinion, but I prefer Tony Martin over Ronnie James Dio. I'm not saying he's bad, but I just can't put him in second place. My favorite is Ozzy, obviously, the blues. Tony has such a high voice that I just can't be ignored, especially his era in Black Sabbath. I can respect that, liking Tony Martin over Ronnie Dio. I mean, I like Ronnie Dio more than Tony Martin, but I can understand liking Tony Martin as a singer. He was really good. Still is really good. He's a good singer. Although I don't think his voice can hit the high notes that he could on Headless Cross or anything like that nowadays. But you gotta think, though, that's when he was younger. The only person I can really think of that could still hit high notes like they could in their prime is Rob Halford. That's the only person I can really think of that can still hit high notes from way back when. Because you look at a lot of those shriekers. I mean, Ian Gillan lost his ability to shriek like that. Tony Martin. Ozzy did. He lost his ability to shriek. Dio, because his voice got really... Well, no, actually, I take that back. Dio didn't lose his ability to shriek. That live performance of Mob Rules in 2007, when they were at the New York... I forgot. What was that? It was a theater? I forgot what the theater was called. But when they did that live show in New York, Dio hit this crazy note on the beginning of Mob Rules. That was awesome. But you look at someone like Phil Anselmo, he could shriek like Rob Halford. He can't do it anymore. Vince Neil, oh my goodness, Vince Neil, he can't do it anymore. David Lee Roth, David Wayne in Metal Church near the end of his life, he could barely shriek or sing anymore. Sad to see, but you know, you just got to take care of your voice, and it's really hard to maintain that ability to shriek like that. It just takes a lot of skill and a lot of like technique, because if you don't use the proper technique, you'll easily fry your vocal cords. My hot take, Heaven and Hell is just as good as Ozzy era stuff. Yeah, I like Heaven and Hell. I just think that album's kind of front loaded. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not crazy about the production, and I'd really like to see Tony Iommi remix that album. But I respect that opinion. My most controversial opinion is they're just not that good. Forbidden is a great record. 13 wouldn't have been any better with Bill, mainly due to Rick Rubin. 7th Star is a good record. Sweet Leaf is overrated. Man, you fellas really don't like Sweet Leaf that much. I will agree that Forbidden is a good record. I'm not going to say it's amazing, but it is good. As for 13, I do think Billboard would have boosted it, but yeah, I still would have had a problem with the production on that album. I do agree 7th Star is a good album, and we've already talked about Sweet Leaf. I'm not going to repeat myself again. I have yet to have heard a band where all members sound as perfect together as the original Sabbath lineup. They were all exceedingly talented and had a unique approach to their respective instruments and still blended together so perfectly on all albums they did together. Even 13, except no Bill Ward. Speaking of which, Bill Ward, John Bonham. I think John Bonham's better than Bill Ward. But as for the other take, as perfect together as the original Sabbath lineup, I would argue the Mob Rules lineup. I would argue the lineup on Headless Cross. I think they sounded amazing with that lineup. Even like the Born Again lineup. I could think of a bajillion Sabbath lineups that I think they sounded perfect on. Metallica. I think Metallica sound perfect together with either Cliff Burton or Jason. Either one of those. I think they sound perfect with Rob too. The original Dio band, the original Ozzy solo band. Pantera, Megadeth, the Rust in Peace lineup, Slayer, like the original Slayer lineup, Iron Maiden with Bruce on Number of the Beast, Judas Priest with the Stained Class lineup. I would argue Kiss, the original Kiss lineup. I love Kiss. I'd say Slipknot, the original Slipknot, not the original Slipknot, but like Slipknot Iowa era, not 99, because they had that other feller, I forgot his name. I think that was before Jim Root joined the band. They had a different feller, I forgot his name. But I'd say like Iowa era Slipknot, Led Zeppelin, the Beatles. I could keep listing like perfect lineups all day, I think, but I'll just leave it at that. I do respect it though if you think that the Aussie era Sabbath lineup was the best out of any band in the world. I respect that. To me, that's the Mob Rules lineup, personally. I'm glad Dio left because he created the band Dio, which in my opinion is better than Black Sabbath. You know, I used to agree with that. When I first got into Black Sabbath and the Dio band, I used to not care for Black Sabbath that much. I liked the Dio band more. But it wasn't until like probably about like 2 or 3 years, I started liking Black Sabbath more than the Dio band. But originally I did think that the Dio band was better than Black Sabbath. I can see where you're coming from with that. I think Tony Iommi is the greatest guitarist of all time. I do too. And respect his determination to keep the band going for so long. It's not really a hot take, but I had to say something because Black Sabbath is my favorite band. I also think Technical Ecstasy isn't even really that bad, and appreciate Never Say Die sometimes. The only album I don't really like is Born Again. I can understand where you're coming from not liking Born Again if you don't like the production, if you don't like Ian Gillan's lyrics, if you don't like the songs. I understand where you're coming from with Born Again. I do like Technical Ecstasy, I do like Never Say Die, and I do agree that Tony Iommi is the greatest guitar player of all time. I love Tony Iommi's guitar playing. Him and Richie Blackmore, and who else would I say is like a top? And Dimebag. I would say, oh no, I've got to add more now. Tony Iommi, Richie Blackmore, Jimmy Page, Dimebag Darrell, Eddie Van Halen, and Jimi Hendrix. Just to name a bunch of guitar. There's even more guitar players I like besides that, but those are the main ones. I'd have to get a whole list of guitar players that I love because there's just too many to list. Born Again, one of the worst albums of all time, but I respect your opinion if you like it. Black Sabbath is my favorite band. You might like Born Again more when the Tony Iommi remix comes out, because a lot of fellas didn't like Forbidden until the Tony Iommi remix, so I think for fellas who don't like Born Again, wait until the Tony Iommi remix. If we even live that long enough to see it, my goodness, that thing's gonna be like Look Outside Your Window by Slipknot, where they say they're gonna put it out every year, they just never do. My goodness, they've been milking that thing for so long. Oh my goodness. I honestly think there's a higher % chance of me getting back with my ex-girlfriend than Slipknot putting out Look Outside Your Window. I think it's gotten that bad. Ozzy was better off as a solo artist, and Black Sabbath are better off with Dio. I agree with that statement. I love Dio-era Sabbath. I agree with that. And those are some Black Sabbath hot takes. That'll wrap it up for Black Sabbath Week 2025. I hope you enjoyed it. And, what will be next for the channel? I want to do a Pantera album ranking. I want to do a Rat album ranking at some point. I'm trying to think of what else I want to do. Because I do want to make a Pantera album ranking. I actually was going to do that before I did Metallica, but the Metallica one got more votes, so I went with Metallica first. But I do want to make a Pantera one. I do want to talk about... maybe do some more album battle videos. I think that'd be fun. Q&A 2 is going to be a very long time. Just because... I want to wait till our viewership gets up in numbers before I make Q&A 2. Because that's going to be a very long video, and I don't feel like spending like an hour or 2 hours making a Q&A 2, and then barely anybody watches it. I want to wait till we have like a dedicated viewers before I put so much time into a project like that. So we'll wait on Q&A 2 for now. At some point, I don't know if it's going to be this year or it might be early 2026. I do want to have a 3 Days Grace week with my friend Mia. I'm not sure when that'll be, but I do want to have that at some point. The reason why it's taken so long is because we originally scheduled that thing for September, I think. And we just, both of us had a bunch of other stuff going on around that time, and we didn't get around to it. And then we waited so long that we forgot how the albums went. We had to go re-listen to the albums. It might be a while before you get 3 Days Grace Week, but that is something we have in the works. We're also going to get back to playing more things on Chaotic Llamas at some point. Not sure when, but you'll see some videos out there eventually. We're trying to decide if we should stick with making gaming videos or we should do reaction videos, what we should do. Because I'm not sure if you fellas are aware of this, but gaming channels on YouTube, they're kind of dead. You just don't really... Let's Plays just don't really do that well in the Big 25. I think now most fellers look for live streams when they want to watch people play games, or They look for highlights from a stream. It just seems like Let's Plays are kind of dead on YouTube. So we'll see what's going on around there. I would love to make a Michael Jackson album ranking once I buy all the albums, and I've gotten requests for that. A Van Halen album ranking I could do, because I just need to buy, I think, like 3 or 4 more albums, and I could do that. I'm not gonna buy Van Halen 3, though. That album's awful. I've gotten requests for a Metal Church album ranking. I don't own any Metal Church albums, but if you fellas don't care about me actually physically owning the CDs or the vinyls, let me know, because I could just throw up a PNG or something, or be like, boom, this album's coming up next, instead of actually holding it up, if you fellas don't care about me actually holding up the albums or anything like that. If it would be easier if we could go faster if I just went like, number 10, boom, there it is, and and edit in the album I'm talking about. We could do that. That'd save time and money. But if you fellas have any ideas for like future content I could do in terms of long form videos, because I kind of want to move away from shorts right now. I want to focus more on long form videos. Let me know down in the comments down below any suggestions you might have. But until then, fellas, I'll see you next time, and take care of yourself, stay safe, and go continue blasting that Black Sabbath. I can never tell which way to go with these things.